Good morning, everyone. For this HE Hub session this week in October, we've got the digital skills for remote working and learning. Just for those of you who are new to the HE Hub, I just want to give you a bit of a background of what it is, why we put it together, and sort of what we'll be talking about going forward. So historically, the HE Hub was an idea that we had to put together for our customers and peers in the higher education sector, and the point was to sort of direct a session where we can get all the business leaders in from the sector and talk about relevant themes that are applicable to the sector. So we've had some we've had Andy Dunn from Edinburgh talk around the COVID-19 response strategy. We've had John McCarthy at the University of Salford talk around their sort of case study of CRM and talk about the history of their CRM failed implementations and the journey they've been on to get to where they are now with a very successful implementation. And we've also had some third parties such as Microsoft. So we had Elliot Howes come in and talk around the customer insights piece. So the themes are put together by you and peers in the sector. It's not supposed to be a case where Crimson lead the session and every theme is sort of generated by ourselves. It's all about that collaboration between yourselves. If there's any themes that you want to talk about in the future and you're happy to talk about it, please get in contact and we can arrange it. So for today, we've got Steve Smith, who's a Microsoft Regional Director and also CEO at Combined Knowledge. So the theme is around digital skills, remote working and learning, and it's really come around with the ongoing restrictions that we have in response to COVID-19 and the ever-changing restrictions that are in place. Universities across the UK are having to impose radical changes to the way they conduct classes and reevaluate policies as restrictions change on a regular basis. Distance learning and remote working are now key practices for higher education institutions. And today I'd like you to just join Steve and he'll talk about how Combined Knowledge are utilising Microsoft technologies like SharePoint, OneDrive and Microsoft Teams and revolutionising the way we connect and collaborate as a workplace. So on that note, Steve, if I could hand over to yourself.
All right. Yeah, super. Well, hi, everybody. As I was just saying, this is an introduction to the HE Hub with Crimson University tied in. As already mentioned, my name is Steve Smith, CEO from Combined Knowledge. I'm also a Microsoft Regional Director, which basically means that I have spent a long time working with Microsoft technologies since the early 90s, actually, working with various technologies in terms of the server-side infrastructure, moving through into collaboration, SharePoint Online, as it developed in the 2010 into 2020 into what we have now with Office 365 and the full stack suite. And so that gives me the ability to work very closely with Microsoft and then with myself and our customers to get feedback and the way the industry is changing and the way users are changing, which is really what has brought us forward to the point we're at today, where there was technology available that enabled the remote working shift this year that a lot of people didn't really want or weren't ready for or were thinking about. But it actually, by having technology that was able to support that shift rapidly, actually saved a lot of companies from having a lot of technical issues that otherwise, if we'd have tried this 10 years ago, would have been a problem. So the whole theme of remote working and the ability to educate and have skills is become a key part of this year's digital transformation. And obviously this has been ongoing for many years. And when we think of that evolution of the skills adapting to the business, if we go back to the sort of the 2000s when a lot of people were starting to utilize a lot of the tools that were being provided, historically we would be in a classroom. You'd have to figure out how to get everybody into that classroom, especially from a user's perspective, and you'd also have to make sure that the content that you were providing those users wasn't too much, because obviously they've got other things on their minds, and it had to be more focused, and that became a problem. So as time progressed, when we started looking at the adoption of technology user education, it became more blended, customized, where we were able to break it down to say 2-hour sessions rather than a day session for users focused on what they needed to know. But again, it was still in person, still in the classroom. It was all very much in person. And that's not a bad thing for technical people, and it's not a bad thing for things like power users that need that sort of more depth of knowledge. But of course, what we soon found was the problem with that classroom was as the products evolved and that Microsoft were producing more and more collaborative tools focused on the user, and more was being shifted away from the IT management side and more into the sort of business involvement, and they were looking at the technology from their perspective and how they can set it up to work for them. We then found that encouraged businesses to now say to the users, we're going to give you more technology, we're going to give you more things to do. Microsoft has released this new feature and we're going to roll it out, and we'd really like you to use it. And that brought with it a real issue in skills, because otherwise, if you didn't have some form of digital communication, everybody had to keep going back in the classroom constantly. And so we found that as a company that by sort of 2012, 2013, there was a requirement to shift the way people learn at their pace, but also on demand. And it's also the same time that, you know, a lot of the video channels like YouTube, etc., really started to gain steam from now, because what we could see from the public video channels was people were starting to get used to consuming knowledge much in the same way that we used to consume knowledge from forums and text-based chat groups. People were much more aware of consuming content via video. And as time progressed and we started to build custom videos and out-of-the-box videos on all the technology, we learned, as well as a company that produced education content, that there is a right way and a wrong way of actually producing content as well that resonates with the users. And at the end of the day, we're trying to resonate with users here and make them educate as well as benefit the business and what we're trying to achieve within the business. And so as time progressed with the videos, then we started to really focus the ability for a company to then take that transition from the sort of static, here's a lesson on, say, using Word, or here's a lesson on using Excel, which is great, but we'd also like to build lesson plans or pathways that are targeted at specific personas within the business. So that way, by customizing that delivery capability, you're now able to shift the way of consumption to where you are, what you're trying to do, what you need to know, and here's everything you need in a very quick and easy way to consume it. And what we found is that this evolution of learning and skills, by targeting and narrowing down the field of consumption, you get a much higher rate of adoption for those people that are being given access to technology, maybe for the first time, or maybe they've just sort of had it for a little while. Maybe they, for example, had Microsoft Teams and they've just been doing calendars, but they haven't really used any of the other functionality. And then when you can map that their day-to-day job, i.e. their ways of working persona, with the technology that's available, suddenly you're able to build a very proactive and targeted skills program. And so that's what the Crimson University, in alignment with the HE Hub, is all about. It's building that alignment of consuming knowledge when you need it, where you need it, but also gaining those skills that enable you to continue evolving, not just with the way you work, but also with the way Microsoft, for example, is changing their technology in the background as they roll out features over time. And as our nature as users are becoming much more digitally aware, the use of using videos as a way to consume this is obviously gaining as well, which is why everything's starting to align in that way. So I'll take you on a tour of the Crimson page that we've created and worked on in terms of the sort of content you can expect and how we build these types of these portals as well. But the university page, the actual landing page, is designed around that pathway of learning. And we're not saying that this is the only way you can learn, because we've obviously got lots of different ways that you can get the knowledge needed. And I'll show you some of these in a quick demonstration shortly. But as you can see, the whole point of the landing page, which is running within Office 365 as well, so it's all linked, which means it all works remotely. It works on any device. I mean, when we think about ways to access content and ways to access skills programs, at the end of the day, we want to be wherever we are. We want to be on any device we're on. And if I need access to that information, that skills, I want to be able to use it effectively. So using things like the modern SharePoint online communication sites, we're able to build pages that are not just rich, but also will look great on any device. So it doesn't matter if you're on your iPad, your laptop, your PC, your mobile phone. The idea of learning is thinking about the fact that we are now all over the place in terms of where we could be to do our job. And we could be using a lot of different devices to do our job. So therefore, we need to make sure our skills and education align to that as well. We also need to ensure, obviously looking at the at this dashboard, that it's pretty easy for people to be able to look at where they should be going. So if I'm looking for an academics skills program, for example, in that pathway, then that's clearly identified. It's easy for me to dip into the bit that I'm looking for. And also, if I'm specifically wanting to follow a distance learning pathway, that again, we categorize that in a nice and easy way. So the whole point of this hub space is to enable that on-demand, instant get to my content that I need where I need it, without having to start, wandering around and searching and finding content that's potentially the wrong stuff. This makes it nice and easy. So when we do this type of building of different elements or pathways to follow, this is commonly referred to your personas. And persona doesn't mean you as a person. A persona would be I'm a student, or I'm an academic, or I would be an IT person, or I might be somebody who's working from home. I might be somebody who's got a new updated laptop. So my persona could be remote working with this type of technology. And that would be a persona that we look at in terms of targeting content. So the hub is designed to allow this type of capabilities within the product stack. So if there was a persona that was needed, it can be added. And that's the beauty of this, is that it's not fixed onto one particular avenue that's on display here. If somebody turns around and decides, based on all the content, that they'd like to create a new persona, that can be created fairly quickly, actually, because the tools allow that to work in that way. So when we think about students, we're thinking from a higher education perspective of building skills that a student would use. Certainly, if you imagine somebody coming on board and they've never used Teams before, or they've never attended classes before, or they've never worked remotely before, we want to make sure that they are able to get quick access to the videos that take them through how to join, be in a meeting, join a class, share a document. Maybe they need to collaborate remotely with the instructors, or maybe they need to collaborate with other students in their class. So within the persona of the students, we've got this ability to browse around the different topics. So if I just quickly, before I go forward, let's just quickly look at this. So let's go over to the hub page itself, so we can see that here, hopefully. Let's just make sure. Yep. So we can see here in the hub homepage that here's our training for students persona. So if I open that page, we can see actually how rapid that was actually. And as we scroll down, we can see that we've got in this particular page some various videos that are structured to help them with whatever content it is they're trying to follow. So somebody might turn around to them and say, I want to share a file, or can you share that with me? And they're thinking, well, I've never done that before, so how do I do that? And on their kind of here's your core student knowledge, they can simply start playing that video. And what the training content is all about is not just about, here's some quick steps that you need to do. The training content is actually about embedding the steps that they need with an instructor in the screen, clearly talking about how to do the task that they're trying to do. So it's like being in a classroom, but only for 5 minutes. And this engagement is a real key player we found in users wanting to actually watch the whole of the video. Because if you just simply give somebody a text-based steps, or if you just simply give somebody a video that's just got some sort of cartoony characters bouncing around with some voice overlay, pretending to, talking about technology, we find it's not engaging for a lot of users. They do not find it like a lesson. Most people like to be taught as if they were being shown, and as if they were in front of somebody who was showing them, like a floor walker, or just somebody who's leaning over them telling them what to do. And so these videos are full HD as well, so we can go full screen, which means we can watch them as a full-blown show, and we can see that this particular one is 4 minutes and 18 seconds long. So it's not overpowering in terms of the amount of time that it's there for. So it's targeted virtual on-demand digital content that can be watched as many times as they want. The minute they know it's there and they need to refresh, they can always go back and look again. And on top of that, there are always things like captions as well, so we can always bounce the text over it if people need to read the text as well as it's being spoken. So the captioning works live across all the videos at any time, and people can turn them on or off. This is a real key part of that work from anywhere, in any environment, with any device. I can still get the help I need without necessarily having to ring somebody. And we can see that one of the other areas of these types of sort of 4 to 5 minute videos, these are designed around the proven methods of length of video to keep engaged, and similar to an action that, say, support desk or service desk would normally do. And this is what they'd try to take somebody through over the phone, etc. But this is actually going to do a lot of that work for those groups of people. And the users, once they start to understand how the pathways work, they can then obviously dip in and out and always go back at any time. So these videos and this structure here is for the students, is based on what we have ascertained that would be really good to help a student get started with their classes. On a similar vein, we go for the academics. Now, the academics are going to be needing skills that aren't just about sharing files, because they will need some of similar things that the students will need in terms of knowledge. But of course, if you're somebody that's going to be a lot more creating rather than sharing and accessing, then your content is going to be subtly different. And this is what we mean by that, building custom personas. So the academics will be much more involved in, say, creating the meeting. So they will want to go into Microsoft Teams, create the classroom meetings, invite the students, invite external people. And this is where they subtly differ in what the actions are that they'd need to use. So if we go into our hub page here, go back to the main page, we've got our training for academics here. We go into that, and again, we can see that straight away we're looking at the creating a meeting is their starting one, and it's the same. It's obviously the same videos where necessary, and in fact, in total now, within the hub environment, there are now over 200 videos. So that equates to roughly 700 hours of content in total across all of Office 365. So we've not got an issue in terms of covering the content. What is key is building the videos linked to the way we want to work and the ways of working. And so when we think about the academics persona, we've got things like managing a chat, not just chatting and not just working with chat, but actually managing it. How do I make sure that we are keeping on top of the way that we're working, both from an academic and a student's perspective? Sharing files. Now that one was common. So we can see here that this content is linking to the same video for both personas. One of the good things about this linking system that we've built is that they all go to a central source of content. So if you imagine that Microsoft updates the sharing mechanism with Microsoft OneDrive, we want to make sure that everybody's getting the latest content. So if I was playing this particular video after Microsoft has done an update, what will happen behind the scenes is that this video will get updated. It will be updated in the master source, and every single location that points to this video will get the latest version in their environment. So there's no management of the content at all. And again, this is what makes the this whole change of remote learning and skills such a key step, because if somebody was to historically say, we've updated this content, would have to go away from a classroom, update all the courseware, update all the slides, update all the training side for the users, tell them to swap their old stuff out, bring this new stuff in. They sit them in the classroom and go through all the changes. That's a lot of cost, and it's also a lot of effort to do that. Whereas simply by doing this way, we're able to update the content very quickly and push it out into the new storage, and then it instantly starts updating where people are playing it. So not only are we using this learning mechanism as a get started, learn how to use the tools, you're also able to then use it as a constant keep up to date mechanism as well. And that's a very powerful story for both new people learning skills, but also established people who didn't realize that they could do some things new with their tools that they have always been asking about, but they didn't know it was possible anymore. And that means that you can also combine things like the hub training with communications, so that you could add things like as an academic, once they know that something's there, they could then pass that over to the students and say, by the way, folks, over the last few months we've been using this tool. Well, now we can add this feature to it, and that will help us when we're submitting certain types of research or information back and forth. And that's a real key part of adoption, and not just adoption of technology, but sustainable adoption of the way that we use the tools itself. So having that linkage between updating videos and updating skills, it really is a key driving factor. And so putting all of that together, what we can then do is build those personas around specific types of ways of working. So in this case, distance learning, which, as we know, everybody has had to shift to the working remote capability. So we wanted to create and think of personas that would really resonate with the higher education as well. So for a lot of people, my daughter's at university at the minute, for example, this shift to logging on and having to do classes remotely, or just working remotely, or just being able to connect to other people remotely, has a big shift for a lot of people that they've not used before, for those people that have always been working in person. So distance learning as a persona made a lot of sense, because it's always available. The content's always there on demand when you want it. And we found that when you say to people, you've always got access to this content, they find it a very powerful tool, knowing that they can go back at any time. And they don't necessarily want to ask somebody. They don't want to chase a service desk. They just want to, they know the answers in there. They just want to watch it a couple of times. They may have watched it the first time. And as we've all seen when we've watched stuff or listened to people talking to us in a classroom, you never pick everything up. You're always making notes frantically. Being able to just run through it again and again and again at their leisure just helps to reinforce the message. But I also mentioned the fact that we can do targeted focused pathways and training on just about any of the content out of those 700 hours. So one of the things that we also encourage is not just persona based specifically within, say, my role as a user, but we also wanted to make sure that within the hub, you could actually go and get focused training on specific technology, because something might, for example, get you thinking, okay, well, if I can do this with this technology, what else can I do with that particular element? And of course, we can see here that we've got a technology example around Microsoft Teams, because overnight everybody suddenly started Microsoft Teams. We found that a lot of people were using it for meetings and calendars, but they weren't really using some of the other features that were really that were available. And yes, we can create pathways to, for example, do how to collaborate with Office 365 or how to collaborate with Teams and invite people. But we also found that some people wanted to be able to go in a step further and be able to really learn a technology quite thoroughly. So if I go to the example on the hub here for this particular Teams learning pathway, we can see that each of the videos, each of the subjects is now broken down by a category of actions. So if I'm having chat conversations, if I'm working specifically with teams like managing a team, so adding guests or deleting channels or adding apps, etc. What if I'm doing calls, so managing a telephony call? What if I'm doing file management and sharing and uploading and chatting around a file? So you can see how all of these, this page now looks very different to the previous page because it's really focused on lessons around the technology. And so, for example, I might turn around and say, I want to send let's do start a chat, for example, here. Then this particular video is now straight into that particular topic, and they can straight away now go in and view that topic on full screen individually, just on that one Teams effort. So it's really it's a really straightforward way of giving users the ability to have a learning pathway, but specifically around a single technology stack. Now, these can obviously be focused on any particular app that we want to in Office 365 because they're available. And when we think about users getting used to consuming content at their leisure, then having the ability to access all of the content on top of these linking does make it a very powerful proposition. So within the product itself, we can go into a landing page, and within this landing page, we have all the content that's available across our Office 365 content subscription, and anything that's in that dashboard is available to build through a custom pathway. And each of the sections are broken down based on the technology that you might get access to. So, for example, we might have some people who are starting to leverage, let's say, forms. So Office 365 Forms is being promoted as a way to ask polls and questions that want to be sent out. And maybe people want to be able to push this into Teams, so that when somebody's working in a team, they've also got a form available to them. And we've got things like Surface Hub training. So, you know, what if we've got somebody who's actually working with Surface devices as an academic that wants to be able to learn how to use them and integrate them with the meetings and things like that. So it's not just about a specific app, it's also about using the apps across different tools. And we've also got things like Outlook and Word and Excel, so your common user tools as well. So this really does spread across all of the various components. And one of the other things that we really want to encourage as part of the adoption strategy, which is why the content is here, is the ability to take the knowledge to the next level as and when the users are ready. And a great example of this would be things like Power Apps, where we've got the ability for people to build their own custom Power App forms development for their data and their lists. And the way Microsoft is setting this up is that they're basically letting it's a user self-service capability, which means, you know, if I was working with files and I wanted to go and create a form that I could fill in and submit data to that information by using my mobile phone, I can simply use Power Apps to do that. But of course, a lot of people would not have used Power Apps before. And so here's how they would get that introduction training without needing to go and do any other research, anything else. They just start by going here, reading those, watching those videos, and then having a go at it. And now you can see in each of these dashboards that it shows you how many lessons on each one, and it also shows you how long it is. So that particular one has got 2 hours of training, and SharePoint Online has got 4 hours and 30 minutes of training, Power BI 2 hours 45. So when we start looking at some of these videos, it's not necessarily everybody that's going to look at all of it, but certain users from certain business areas will find some of these areas really beneficial for them to learn from, and they haven't got to start requesting going on different training courses, budgets for these other classes. It's all built into the product on demand. So, for example, somebody might turn around and say, I've got to start working on building a BI dashboard and formatting columns. So you'll notice that within this particular training dashboard, we've got lesson plans on the left-hand side, and each one of these relates to an individual video. So this is a different menu system than the one we saw before, which was on the Teams, further Teams training. This is broken down a little bit further, and each of the lesson plans are here, but we can obviously reformat them into any way, shape or form for consumption by the users. Works in exactly the same way as before. We've got all the captioning, and it uses the same video source that we saw earlier in terms of everything centrally linked to the same location. So total 600 lessons, dip in and out as you need to. There is no limit on which ones you watch. Go back, watch them again. You can watch them all as often as you like. They are all the core Office 365 apps that are in there. And that's on top of all the persona ones, etc., that's within the HE Hub. So the idea behind all of this is, from a higher education perspective, is to make sure we've got personas based on academia, we've got students, we've got certain pathways targeting certain groups of users, and we've got certain technology to focus people on the technology that they need to know straight away, such as Microsoft Teams, because we know that for remote working, that's key. But then we've got all the other apps that are also available, consumable at any time, so that you've got that continuous skills involvement as we go along. So I think that takes me up to my 30 minutes, and I hope you found that useful. Obviously, there is going to be a lot of contact details shared with you all following on from this video. The Skills Hub is there to aid and evolve your user skills pathways, not just for the short term, but the long term. The whole point of this is to make sure that people that are using the technology have got the tools and the skills to continue to evolve with the technology. And as Microsoft continues to evolve their services, which they will on a regular basis, they update hundreds of features every month. Then we need to make sure that the skills program aligns to that, and your users are also aligned to that. So they're not going to get confused watching stuff that's, you know, a year old and not relevant. It needs to stay relevant because the way we are now starting to work digitally, remotely, part of that transformation is making sure our skills programs transform with it. Hence why this becomes a very powerful solution. So I'll hand back over, and thanks for listening, everybody, and feel free to contact us anytime. The contact details will be shared as well shortly, I believe.
Thank you, Steve. Really good, really insightful session. And just to echo what Steve said, we'll be submitting this content, sending it out, and attached to the content, as always, we'll be sending out some feedback in the form of forms. So please fill that out. There's a chance to win a voucher, an Amazon voucher. So fill that out, and please, you know, any feedback put through that avenue. And I'll be also sort of sending out Steve's contact details as well as myself. Thank you very much. Bye.